What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are going to talk about a common issue that I have seen, honestly, not just on my channel, but all over the internet. And it goes a little something like, hey, Mr. YouTube man, I've been putting in the practice and how come my drivers aren't going any farther even though all my putters are? And don't worry, Mr. Random in the comments, this Mr. YouTube man might have a couple answers on why that's happening. But before we dive in, have to ask the most important question of the day. How are you doing today, Trevor? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
Something that seems to happen quite often to people in performance-related sports like golf, disc golf, bowling, things like that, where it is a very accurate skill that you need to take out and apply on the battlegrounds or on the field of play. We can spend a ton of time practicing and really trying to dial in certain parts of our game. And yet on the practice green, or when I see these things happening in the practice environment, I'm not finding the translation to success while I'm out on the course, the field of play, whatever it may be. So over the next few Tuesdays here on the channel, we're going to be addressing some common practice myths and confusions that I seem to be seeing out there, especially in the side of the disc golf space. And we're starting with a big one today, talking about drivers. So often people will put the time in to improve their distance on their form and start to see some pretty decent gains in their putters and their mid-ranges, and yet when they get to throwing drivers, they find that they're not getting the incremental or percentage increase out of their drivers that they are out of their putter or mid-range distance. I wanted to address a couple of major reasons that you may not have been thinking about that could be big factors in why your drivers aren't increasing distance while your putters and mids happen to be gaining them ups. Now, if you've had conversations about form in the past and people trying to get more distance increases, then most likely you've heard them talk about nose angle. Nose angle is as the disc is progressing forward, it is this front part of the disc, and whether it is pointed down or up. Why this matters is because a nose down disc is going to cut through the wind and allow the wind to come over top it and allow the wind to come underneath it to keep it up. As this happens, think about like the plane on a wing is not pointed up like this. It has that downward slope as it flies so that that wind can help assist it in getting more distance and get you to your destination. Now, nose angle is something that many players struggle with, myself included, when you're first learning to throw a disc. And the reason is there are some common factors in how we throw a disc. Most of the time, if we're arming it, we're getting this disc way above the elbow and we're not doing the necessary actions of pronating and coming down and making sure that we hit a proper nose angle on the release of the disc. We're just letting it rip through and we're driving that thumb through the shot as we arm the crud out of the disc, pushing it, boop, nose up, like that. You see air bounces happening all the time because when I swing high to low like so, my disc has two options. I can either throw it straight into the dirt, or my body can subconsciously tell me, hey, I know you don't want to do that, so I'm going to fix and drive that thumb and air bounce it and cause it to go pretty nose up. Now, putters and mid-ranges are traditionally significantly deeper than a driver. You can see right here as I hold these side by side how much deeper the putter is compared to this driver. And that's the overall shape of it, not just the inside of the flight plate. Looking at the putter and the mid-ranges, as they fly more nose up, because they're deeper, the wind is getting underneath and hitting this back wall of the rim and slowing it down. But that's okay because they don't require that much power or spin to get up to speed to cause them to fly correctly. Therefore, the wind coming underneath it and slowing it down actually doesn't hurt it as bad, so the nose angle isn't as crucial on a putter or a mid-range. However, on a driver, it requires more power and spin to get up to speed and to fly correctly. So as the wind is coming underneath and hitting this back part of the flight plate and it's flying like so, it's taking significant spin and power off of the disc, which means that it's not going to get up to speed and not reach its full potential, which is why we're not seeing as much distance potential out of the disc. Changes to your form and how you're swinging may be really good at causing more power to be put into the disc, but that power is going to be incrementally lost the faster disc you throw because you aren't working on your nose angle. So there are plenty of videos out there that talk about how to fix a nose angle, but the most common one that people give is pouring the coffee. And that is when you grip the disc, you want to, as if you're holding a coffee pot, pour and point that wrist down. If I point the wrist down and I focus on keeping that wrist down through the entire motion, it's going to take several weeks of you trying to implement this, where that becomes subconscious that your wrist is just pointed down when you're throwing the disc, throwing the shot, so that you can stop actively thinking about that during your throw and more so go back to other form changes and focus points of your throw. But like I said, that one is super obvious, and if you've heard people talk about form in the past, you've probably heard them talk about nose angle. The second one and the third one that I want to talk about are pretty interconnected, but you have to address the chicken before you get to the egg. I think an issue that tons of players struggle with when it comes to throwing drivers, and I know I'm in this boat. If you guys are seeing this video on the day it drops, on Thursday, you're gonna see a video of me playing with the Bogey Bros, playing drivers only, and you'll notice an uncomfortability that I've had all throughout my disc golf career and I've been trying to overcome throughout 2023, and that is that I really dislike throwing drivers because I know this second concept is still so subconsciously driven into the inner workings of my soul that it's hard to overcome. So here I am on the internet making a public confession that some of you probably, feel free to join me in the comments on this one. When I throw drivers, it goes like this. And this is the credo of driver struggle people. When I throw drivers, I always believe that I must throw them harder to yeet them farther. Telling you guys, getting that off my chest feels real good, but something I truly believe that many of us feel. When we put a driver in our hands, whether it is because we are more uncomfortable, whether it's because we expect bigger distance potential, we cannot simply grab a driver and think smooth. I can grab a putter and think slow and smooth all day and just rip these things out into the distance and feel so wonderful about what I'm doing. I mean, that flight is magnificent. It's beautiful. It feels so good. But bro, the second that I put a driver in my hands, and it doesn't even have to be a distance driver, it can be a fairway driver, trying to think about throwing it smooth doesn't work. And I try to just grip it and throw it so much harder. And when I choose to do that, I sacrifice so much of what is actually making my form good, what is actually making my form succeed. And until we get past the fact that actually trying to throw it harder, actually trying to throw it more powerfully, is reducing the amount of speed that we have on the disc, that we're injecting into the disc, because we're subconsciously trying to do this harder thing, we are missing that directive and going right underneath it and never reaching the full potential of the drivers we have in our hands. Simply slowing down and trusting the process, trusting things to come in and fire correctly, can create so much fun potential and start mending the deep and broken relationship that I have every time a bladed rim seems to touch my hands. If you find yourself signing the credo, I want to show you a realistic thing that you can do, and most likely it leads to the third issue and why you aren't seeing that distance potential or increase. If you find yourself struggling with drivers, you find yourself struggling to really get that potential out of faster discs, and faster, once again, can be completely relative to your arm speed. For some people, a faster disc could be a 9-speed. For others, it's going to be those 12 and 13s. When we look at concept 2 and we're trying to throw these discs more powerfully, because we do understand that at their core, a distance driver or a faster disc does have to be thrown with more power and spin potential, we could be trying to inject that power and spin the wrong way. So because of this, you may be accurately doing formwork and coming out like myself, who my formwork bag, I have 20 Trash Panda inner cores in my practice bag, and I like to use those over and over again to throw. But what I've had to learn over this year is, while that's really good at helping me focus on nose angle, while that's really good at helping me focus on angle release out of my hands, if I go back to that subconscious credo of I'm going to throw drivers differently, the only way for me to really utilize and see that I am throwing drivers differently is to film myself side by side, trying to throw power shots, trying to throw easy shots, and trying to throw different angled shots, all on camera. Because most likely the reason, and the final reason, that you aren't throwing drivers as far as you are those other discs is because you are literally throwing different when you put a driver in your hands. Your form physically changes. Now, there are tons of YouTubers out there who have these super fancy cameras and stuff like that. And honestly, the camera that I have is fancy, but it's nowhere near anything insane. The best thing I've got going for me is my audio equipment, because I firmly believe in having the audio right. So I have some really nice mics that go on a mediocre camera, but I got to 40,000 subscribers here on YouTube utilizing this guy right here, a cell phone. I remember back in the day, for me, I'm gonna age myself, it was in high school, but I remember as iPhones were coming out and we called them smartphones. There's a whole generation of people now that if I say smartphone, they're like, I got no idea what a smartphone is. Because at this point, this is just a phone. It's no longer smart, it's expected. But the beautiful part about these phones, whether you have an Apple phone or an Android, is that they have great cameras on them, and you can set them up on your bag. You can buy a simple, cheap tripod for 10, 20 bucks on Amazon and get yourself the opportunity to record your form. What you're gonna do is film yourself throwing power shots with 3 putters and power shots with 3 drivers. Go every other shot so that it's not, here's all my putters, here's all my drivers. Get yourself adjusted to switching back and forth, because if you're playing a disc golf course, you're likely going to be switching between putters and drivers as you're out there on the course. Then I want you to throw 6 smooth shots, 3 with putters, 3 with drivers, alternating once again. And lastly, I want you to throw 6 more shots throwing a disc on extreme anhyzer and 6 more discs on extreme hyzer, alternating those putters and drivers once again. You're then going to take your footage and put them side by side of you throwing and try to see, are there differences between how I'm throwing these 2 shots? I'd be willing to bet that what's happening for most people is that when you're throwing your smooth shot, everything is landing and firing correctly as you're coming through, and you're late, you can feel that hit and everything's smoothly coming to this point. Yet when you put a driver in your hand, if you're trying to throw too hard or try to throw too powerfully, like we talked about in point number 2, you're gonna notice that your arm gets ahead of everything else. My arm is pulling into the shot before my feet get set up in position, and therefore I'm ahead on everything, and I'm going to have significantly less power. You may feel like you're doing everything the same, but this video evidence hopefully will show you not only things you can improve in your own form, but that we are physically throwing these drivers and putters differently. Now, once again, this is not the pot calling the kettle black. I understand this is something that I am working through in my own game this year overall, because I think I am an incredibly good putter and mid-range thrower, but when it comes to putting drivers in my hand, I instantly start to suffer, and I can feel anxiety well up inside me when I know the shot is coming, that I have to throw this driver. And that is speaking as someone who plays on the MPO level. I am so much more nervous on a shot that asks me to throw a 9 or 10 speed off the tee backhand than I am if you put me in front of a 35-foot putt for the win. As long as I get off the tee clean, I believe in my approach, and my putting game is up there with the best of them. I believe in my putting and approach game to rock the world around me. And I think that there are many players out there like you who may be watching this right now who feel the exact same way. And I hope that this practice to permanent transition series that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks can actually help make those adjustments as you are practicing, so that you can find the success you're looking for. These subconscious things happening inside of us are having an effect on our game, and we need to speak them into existence. We need to acknowledge them so that we can figure out how to adapt and move past them. I'll give one final piece of takeaway advice to wrap this up, and that is that if you are someone who finds yourself signing that subconscious credo that we listed in Rule 2, Something that's helped me a lot is honestly just putting only 7 speeds as the drivers in my bag, because a 7-speed is a nice balance of a very workable disc that has high distance potential, but I can also just focus on throwing them so smooth and getting my form to feel good while having that bit of a faster disc in my hand, and I can adjust from there and start adding faster discs into my bag. Not because I can't reach certain distance potentials of 12 and 13 speeds, but more so to allow myself to overcome that struggle that I know is very deep and part of my soul. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope that if you sign that credo that we can overcome it together. In the meantime, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.